Congrats on getting beyond $1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of EasyPay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond $1 million. Welcome to Beyond $1 Million. Today, I'm going to talk to Lindsay Shearer. Lindsay has multiple companies, and there are a bunch of cool things that'll come out of this conversation. One of them is we're going to dig into why she has multiple companies. So instead of having different business units under one umbrella that are good at different things or that focus on different things, she has structured her business as just separate entities with somebody new at the helm of each. And this is part of what has allowed her to be successful and create multiple 8-figure businesses. In addition, we're going to talk about the platforms that she's using to drive traffic today. This is really cool. The takeaways here are a little bit surprising to me, but how she bends some of the social platforms to drive traffic is pretty cool. In addition, we'll dig into how she's navigating building her own real estate investment fund. That's a big one if you're looking for places to put money, to just hear another entrepreneur's journey into doing that. So without further ado, here is Lindsay Shearer. Lindsay Shearer, I appreciate you carving out time to hang out.
What's up, y'all? Can't wait to talk about growing and scaling. Here we go.
I love it. So I'd be remiss to not talk about marketing, but before we dive into any sort of tactics and strategies, can you give me just high level what your businesses are and kind of where they are, size or scope?
Yeah, it's crazy because I started out in mergers and acquisitions, and that's how I got into digital marketing, was trying to get the data really quickly for helping businesses buy and sell or acquire IP and that kind of thing. And so about 11 years ago, I started 2 different marketing agencies. I had worked with Nick Shackelford's actually head of marketing for a couple years in a different marketing agency, and I had run some large SEO agencies. And so I started my own SEO agency called Brand Ranks Media about 15 years ago, and then started kind of branching off some divisions of that. And we'll talk about kind of this pod structure that I've created. Well, one of those that really took off was Pins for Profit, which is a Pinterest specific based pod or division of Brand Ranks Media that was really a blue ocean space to try to find everyone's looking for new marketing channels. Everybody's looking for how to get good, high quality traffic. And so at the time, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, nobody was doing Pinterest at all. And I had a lot of high level e-commerce clients looking for additional revenue streams and things like that. So we started Pins for Profit. And now we have a lot of different divisions. We've got Salon Talk Media, which is focused strictly on TikTok for salons. We've got Law Ranks and Roof Ranks and a bunch of different service-based businesses and pods that are focused on SEO and just different digital services, Facebook and stuff like that. And so, yeah, just kind of growing and scaling from there. And then also have a pretty big real estate investing portfolio and working on some real estate funds and things like that as well, too.
Love it. And I want to talk about the nuances of like how you niche down into different things. But the 2 agencies are both 8 figures plus. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
I think I always like to highlight whatever numbers I can because just in general, I want to know who I'm listening to, right? Yeah. So like if I find out later that somebody is doing $500,000 a year, but I've been listening to their advice all night, I'm like, motherfucker.
Hey, yeah. Thanks anyways.
Well, and most of the time, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, you catch that stuff.
Yeah.
But there are also people that are really good bullshitters. Now my radar is pretty sharp.
Well, the marketing industry is kind of a lot of it is based on if you're a good copywriter. So believe me, I have seen and experienced everything pretty much that you can think of when it comes to clients, businesses, all different kinds of things. So I totally understand.
All right. So speaking of copy,
yes,
I can't help myself, but get your feedback on how ChatGPT has infiltrated its way into your world right now, where you're using it, where you're not using it.
Yeah, so we have never really, so our specialty when it comes to SEO and content creation is really link building. So it's not necessarily creating content for a client's website. I usually find that I always encourage, we do mostly e-commerce and some local businesses. I usually encourage people to hire in-house for your on-page copy, AKA blog posts, social media posts, things like that, because somebody that knows your brand is going to do better, even if they use ChatGPT or whatever, Jarvis or whatever, to get some prompts and get some ideas for headlines and things like that. That's totally cool. We use it sometimes for like idea generation, for social media post generation, for various blog articles. Like if we're writing press releases or things like that, I'll look on there and kind of see what's trending, get some ideas for topics. I would not say it's like the be all end all for everything that we're doing for SEO, but I think it's really good for idea generation, headline generation, getting some topics and things like that for reels. We're doing tons of reels on Instagram, YouTube shorts, TikToks, things like that. So it helps you get some ideas for trends. So you're not just sitting there with a blank piece of paper, which sometimes is hard for our team to do. And to also give our clients some ideas. So when we do our initial keyword research plans for SEO, we come up with a massive list of keywords that are going to put them in unique positioning places and things like that. And so then we'll go through and give them a bunch of high level ideas for topics for blog posts and things like that based on those keywords. And so ChatGPT is a great place to get some ideas for that too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good use case for it is purely idea generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. It's funny. I was talking to a YouTube strategy person a couple days ago, and she was like, are you opposed to so Beyond a Million is a YouTube channel also. Yeah. And that's like an area that we want to push more into because it's a captive audience. People that are on YouTube are spending more and more time on YouTube. So she was like, are you opposed to just doing general business information? Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, not at all. And she's like, you should really do some ChatGPT videos because basically anything you do right now gets caught, gets picked up. And I was like, yeah, that's interesting. But it is fundamentally something that's weaving its way into conversations, both in marketing and outside of, because it feels new, right? The AI's been there for quite a while, but the interface is new to just play with it, talk to it.
I think you can never really go wrong. We always do a mix of different strategies for things that are trending for our YouTube, for our SEO articles and things like that, mixed in with things that are going to be long-term, more consistent plays. But yeah, I think you're definitely missing the boat if you're not capitalizing on some of those trending things. And there's a lot of great trending keywords on YouTube. And I'll give you guys just a little tip as you're creating your YouTube content to help it rank higher. You want to use the keywords that you're focused on inside. You want to say them like 7 or 8 times in the actual video, write them in your descriptions, write them in your shorts. You can write them on the actual images that you're creating. You can name the images your keywords, and all of those things are going to help you be seen more as higher in relevancy inside the YouTube algorithm. So definitely use them. Use trending keywords. They rank much faster on YouTube than they do on Google. So yes, highly recommend.
Yeah. So that's great. And I want to talk about kind of some of the specific channels in marketing, because one of the things that seems to be universally true is that no matter the size of the business, nobody can do everything.
Yeah.
And very often businesses have omitted an entire channel that could just crush for them. So content creation, as I think we both know, there are some businesses that are entirely built on it, but others are really sizable and they're just starting. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the basics of that stuff or the nuances and the strategy around it, even to somebody that's huge, can be very helpful. But before we do that, I want to talk about the structure of your marketing agencies, because it's a little different than most people's. And you alluded to it when we first started, but can you give me a foundation of how you started and how it turned into the structure that it is?
Yeah. So I knew that I had like you're saying, I think as an entrepreneur, especially in the marketing world, if you're a CEO, you essentially have to wear a lot of hats. And so I think a lot of people, when you're first starting out, you're trying to figure out where you're finding your ideal clients, what services are you offering, what is scalable, what are your ideal clients willing to pay for these different services? What do you want to do? What do you want to hire out? Different things like that. And so in that process, I always have had a background in SEO. And so that's always been my baseline of understanding is like, okay, how do we get organic ranking? Both of our agencies have been grown, 95% of them strictly with organic marketing. So we use a lot of different organic strategies, and I feel more comfortable there. Even though I run ads professionally for clients. So essentially we created our own division of essentially an SEO agency that was focused on more of a blue ocean space, which is e-commerce. Like you're saying, a lot of different brands are not using certain channels. And that's a huge one for e-commerce, especially if you have products that have a hard time. For example, certain supplement companies or things like that have a hard time sticking with ads. They get banned. You can't make claims. You can't do anything weight loss. There's like a lot of different things hormonally. We do a lot of women's brands. So there's like hormone related stuff. You can't make any kind of weight loss, any kind of image or appearance kind of claims. So we get around that a lot of times by using creative structures for our organic marketing and our organic search. So that's one way. I'm always a huge fan of trying to find a blue ocean space, something that's not super saturated, because SEO in general, I would say for most of the world is pretty saturated. You've got a lot of folks overseas that have been doing it forever, and they're doing kind of weird, different black hat, shady things. So we decided we were going to just focus on e-commerce and then ranking local businesses, because I know I do that. I can rank anything essentially online when it comes to link building. So that, and then what essentially came out of that is I started utilizing a Pinterest strategy, because I realized that Pinterest was considered very highly relevant inside Google search. So if you look, even if you're just kind of browsing Google image search or whatever, you'll see way more. If you start paying attention to how many things are ranking from Pinterest, it's way more than people realized. So essentially, I started matching up, and I created some IP called cross ranks, which is essentially a strategy that ranks multiple channels with one strategy. So search engines, Pinterest is a search engine. So ranking that search strategy with Google, with YouTube, with TikTok now. So now you can create one strategy that's using those different keywords on the different channels and helping drive relevancy back to your website through those social posts, through all the things that you're already doing, but probably didn't think about creating a unified strategy for it. So that's really where we started specializing, breaking out into Pinterest, realizing there's so much traffic to be driven there. Then they launched their ads manager. I already had tons of experience with Facebook ads and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to master Pinterest ads. And so essentially overnight, we became the go-to people for Pinterest marketing, Pinterest ads and organic. And I feel like I sort of back-ended into it. It wasn't like intentional in the first place, but there was a blue ocean space there. And so now what we're doing is creating new pods, essentially based on different niches, things that I know that I can rank. Like I have really good relationships in the legal community. My best friend's a lawyer. She's like the head of this huge association. She's been able to get us into lots of different speaking engagements and things like that. So we have an entire division that's a pod of our business called Law Ranks. So my master business is called Brand Ranks Media. Then we have Law Ranks, which is like a little specialty pod underneath, just focused specifically on legal clients. That way, I don't have to worry about trying to present our entire brand ranks as a service to any kind of brand, but I can focus just specifically on attorneys. I can speak exactly to their needs. I can speak exactly to their desires, that kind of thing in that specific pod. I have an entire set of branding that's just specifically for that, going straight after that. We have Salon Talk Media. It's a huge thing in the salons, med spa space to get on TikTok. Nobody knows how to do it. There's no marketing agencies that are focused specifically on salons. So we created Salon Talk Media. That's just essentially focused solely on salons, TikTok only marketing. We do some Facebook and things like that too, but we lead with this TikTok blue ocean space of what people want, what they desire in that specific niche industry. And we create a pod around it. And the way I'm able to do that is finding a partner who has a passion in that space, so then I don't have to be the one that's like multitasking myself. I know how to do fulfillment. I can rank anything. I can run ads for pretty much anything. I have an amazing team that I've built over the last 15 years. And if I have somebody else that wants to be the face in that way, and they have different relationships and they want to do more of the sales or whatever, I can do fulfillment. So, all
right, let me break that down for a second here. So what I heard was, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I want a point of clarity, but what I heard was you have functionally kind of an umbrella company, a large overarching company, but what you're referring to as pods really are separate operating units with a specific niche that you're targeting. Is that accurate so far?
Specific niche and sometimes a specific marketing channel. Like Pins for Profit is obviously just Pinterest and SEO. Salon Talk Media is mostly TikTok for salons. Law Ranks is mostly Google for legal. So
got it.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is you said you're looking for a partner. Does that mean that each pod you have somebody that has ownership in that business unit?
Yes. And that's something that I never would have opened myself up to until recent years because doing M&A and seeing that 90% of businesses essentially break up due to partnership issues, I was really never interested in having any kind of partnership. But once you start scaling,
I understand.
Once you start scaling though to a certain level, you realize you just cannot do it all yourself. Even if you're excellent, even if you have an amazing team, like I'm out into the world, speaking at AdWorld, speaking at Ecom World, speaking at agency founders, all of these huge events, that's a full-time job. Just doing speaking, getting my slides prepared, all that kind of stuff. There's no way that I can do every ounce of fulfillment, every ounce of client facing and whatever, even if I have an amazing team. People still want to see your face if you have somewhat of a personality brand. So I've opened myself up over the last 4 years or so to partnerships, and I have amazing partners, and we have really good, that's one thing that I'm super stickler on, is like super good agreements, super clear about our communication, dealing with things before they become a problem, getting off the phone if one of us is getting too heated or too passionate about something, and then just trying to set really good, clear boundaries and having someone who's a visionary and someone who's an executionist for sure.
And which are you in those pictures? Is it always the same?
No, actually, that's the interesting part. Like for Salon Talk and things like that, Will, who's one of my partners, he's amazing. He's super visionary. I'm visionary, but he's like really visionary. And I actually feel like I get a break from being super visionary by just being able to go in and just do some of the execution, manage the team, whatever. And then I'm really visionary. I'm like number one face of the brand for Pins for Profit. And then my whole team handles everything. I don't really have to do a lot of back end. I do some client meetings from time to time. And then for brand ranks, I'm super visionary and have a full execution team too. So it really just depends on where. And then for law ranks, Erica she's a lawyer. So she's like all about the documentation processes. She's excellent at fulfillment. And we're both kind of jointly going out and being more public. So I think it just depends on the partner.
Yeah, that's very strange. I like it.
It's crazy, but
well, it is. It's unusual. I mean, usually what happens is people kind of fit an archetype, or they wedge themselves into an archetype and say, hey, I am the executor, or I am the operator, or I am the visionary, right? And you pick a label. But then they look for other people to fill the gap. And this is very much you're wearing a different hat in different companies.
I tried the approach that you're mentioning for many years, and I did fine, but I didn't feel like I was really thriving. I felt like that there were parts of my personality that if I were to do it for a really long extended period of time, I would get bored or whatever. So this works for me. I'm not saying it works for everyone, but because I'm very creative and I like to design and I like to do a lot of things that are very visionary, it's something that I definitely, if you would have asked me this 5 years ago or 4 years ago, I would have been like, no, for sure I'm not doing that. Now I'm like, you know what? I actually really like this. And I'm just kind of having more of a fluid relationship, I guess.
Is it that there are certain topics, like certain of the pods that you're more interested in being the creative in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So more than I would have realized. Like if you would have asked me initially, I would have said, no, for sure I can do this, whatever. But I'm finding that I do like to, and it depends on the skills of my partners too. Like some of them have really good skills in certain areas, and that's fine. And I end up filling in the gap because I can do anything. And some of them have different desires and interests. And I can see just from work, managing people for many years, that they actually thrive better in this element. So I just kind of unconsciously in some ways, like push them like, hey, maybe you should do this part. Maybe this is going to work better for you. Like, oh yeah, I think that's part of being a leader, is encouraging people into their gifting and into the things that they actually desire to do too.
How do you find the people?
Oh my gosh. I have so many great relationships for just that. I feel like part of my job as a business owner is networking, is relationship building, is really cultivating those different relationships. But I feel very blessed. Will is one of my partners from Bible college, like 15 years ago. We've just been friends for many, many years. Erica actually started out as my neighbor. My husband built a really good relationship with her husband, and then we just became really close friends. I was introduced to my previous business partner, Will, who I started the initial SEO agency stuff with through Ryan Fiore, who's actually the head of marketing at Manscaped, where I was doing a bunch of stuff for them. And he was going to initially start our YouTube channel and do a bunch of different YouTube stuff with us. And then me and him just kind of had like this amazing connection and relationship. And we built many different things over 8 or 9 years together. And so I think there's just, for me, it's divine appointment. There's a synergy. I feel an element of synchronicity of just meeting the right people. And then also being willing to put yourself out there and go to different networking events, meet different people. I try to go to every event that I can. I would say probably more when I was starting my career than now. I'm just busier. And now I get to speak at more events, which is really cool. So then you have that underlying element of authority, I guess. And then I also do tons of different podcasts and try and put myself out there and meet cool people who are doing great things and just explore with no agenda. And see, hey, what are you into? Like maybe there's some synergy there, maybe not, and just be really open.
So do you have because you're filling a different role, do you have a structure or like a criteria that you're looking for in those people?
Yes, I would say it has to be somebody who's hyper driven, who is very gritty, who's willing to do whatever it takes to get things done, who's willing to take as much ownership as I am as far as like execution, who has a high level of integrity and really wants to deliver for the clients, who's a great, excellent communicator, especially with me, and is willing to take on the role that needs to be done in that business. So, for example, Will is excellent at sales. He is amazing. He's unafraid to call or show up anywhere and meet anyone. And I'm probably less like that. I'm like, let's just run ads. He's like, no, I'm going to show up and I'm going to do these different things. I'm like, all right, dude, go for it. You knock yourself out. And he's crushing it. I mean, we're doing amazing. So, and Erica's she's kind of like that badass Karen type person that's like, nobody's going to mess with me. Like, I'm going to get it done. I don't really care what it takes. So she's opening different doors in different associations. And she's kind of like one of those people that knows how to be creatively political as well. I'm super not that way. So I'm like, okay, awesome. You can open all those doors. And she, we do all the different events and her husband's like the head of all these associations and whatever. So I'm like, awesome. I'll just come and be cool and fun and the marketing person.
So let me ask you, like when you talk about the structure of having the pods, there's benefit to being able to niche down because you can get a very deliberate, specific message to your ICP really clearly, and it's going to speak loudly to them, right? Now, you totally isolate yourself from the rest of the world, but you're speaking just to this audience. Yes. Hey, this agency is just for you, right? What do you think you're losing by not having the entire thing as one large agency? And why do you have it structured that way versus this one large agency? I would say the hardest part is, and this is a choice that I had to make. Not everyone does it this way. Everyone kind of does it differently, or they do a pod structure, but they're not as vocal about it. I've noticed that. Two, so I made the executive decision that I was going to build my own personality brand as myself versus building the large marketing agency as its own brand. Now, you'll see for example, Nick Shackelford has done this too because he's his own personality brand. And then he has 3 different brands too. Inside there, he's got the Geek X, the events, Constant Creative, and then Structured Agency. So each of those, he has the resources, time, effort, energy, staff to build each of those as a separate brand. I just personally didn't want to do that. I knew that I was going to have to do a personality brand for myself. And that leaves me open to some things that don't pigeonhole me just specifically to marketing. Like, for example, we're starting a fund. I'm going to be doing a lot more real estate, a lot more investing topics and things like that, which I think that's the natural progression if you look at anybody who's like a really highly successful entrepreneur that has a personality brand, at some point, like your Tony Robbins, like everybody starts
opening up more into this investing relationship or investing dialogue or real estate dialogue. There's got to be a bigger vehicle to get people to that result. And I realize that marketing is a great vehicle. It's an amazing thing that's opened so many doors for me, but I don't think it's the biggest vehicle to get me where it is that I know my purpose and my destiny is. And so for me, I had to make that executive decision that we weren't going to just build the agency as a brand. We're going to do me as a brand, and then we have our micro agencies, and I don't really care if I get publicity about those or not. Pins for Profit seems to have taken off and done really well, and that's the most recognizable because it's the most tied with my personal messaging and brand. So everybody has to make their own executive decision.
Do you think so? But I mean, in theory, you could do the agency as a brand and have, I mean, I could pick 1,000 examples, but you could have the agency. And then you brought up a good point, which is that often inside of a large branded agency, they have departments or pods that specialize on, Facebook ads or the organic content, right? Or their SEO team or whatever, and still do it that way and have your personal brand. But ultimately the decision was, it sounds like, you found people that really took ownership of the pods, which freed up some time to create a personal brand for yourself and leverage it that way.
Yep. There's a million ways to do it. I've seen many people like Eddie Malouf does his 4 Media Marketing, and the 4 Media Marketing has its own podcast. I just didn't do it that way. I didn't feel super connected to that. So just because, I don't know, I am a visionary and I didn't want to be like in a box of like, okay, now I'm growing this huge brand. And I know how much time, effort, and energy it takes to grow a following and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, I'll just do the personal one. And then we can have like little divisions that break off. And if they crush it, great. And I don't have to be super attached to the outcome of that.
Yeah. And the other, and I want to pivot into the real estate stuff because I think it's, I spend a ton of time in real estate and just love it. I like physical assets and I like space. Like I like creating space. Yeah. But I think you're spot on that at some point, most entrepreneurs, and you mentioned brands moving into it, but I think in general, just there's creating revenue and then there's building wealth. Exactly. And many, many, many people, the wealth building chapter comes through investment after you've generated revenue, right? Right. And there are some, obviously, if you hit it out of the fucking park, right? If you create the unicorn and have some ridiculous exit, you've just got a ton of cash. But what do you do with it then? Yeah. And so there's a huge chapter of how to invest and also how to not get fucked on taxes. But
oh my God, don't even get me started about that.
I think I might.
Best tax strategies. Exactly. I feel like, I'm really big silver and hard assets too, for sure.
Let's talk about just basic ideas for what you invest in. So you said silver, hard assets, and then real estate. I want to talk about like what type of real estate and how you got into it, because I think the path is always different. In real estate alone, there's, dozens of asset classes that all operate totally differently, and people niche down to one or they're kind of broad. And how did you get into it, and what other things do you tend to invest in before we get into the fun? Because I think that's another chapter.
Yes. So my husband and I started. So he's from Louisiana. I'm not from here. I just moved here with him a few years ago and we got married. And I'm from San Diego, where it's extremely expensive to buy anything. So when I moved here, I was like, holy crap, I'm like a multimillionaire overnight. I can buy
like a garage sale.
All these I just like went on a buying spree. My mom's like, you're crazy. I'm like, so what? Not really. I'm creating generational wealth. So essentially we started with single family units, and then we bought or single family homes, really, because there's a lot of them for sale here and they're like $200,000 in that range. And so I was like, oh yeah, I was so excited. Then I realized, okay, so we also started doing short-term rent. We did a mixture of short-term and long-term rentals. I thought for sure, everybody's on the Airbnb train, whatever, VRBO train. So I'm like, all right, let's try it. So that is so important to figure out like what is working in your area. So where we live, we don't live in New Orleans, but we live 40 minutes across the lake in New Orleans, kind of like in the Santa Monica, LA area, where it's like the suburbs, probably like a wealthier area. It's more well kept. There's not really any crime. It's very clean. those types of things. But there's not a lot of travel here. So for things like Airbnb, so we have multiple Airbnbs. It was something I decided, and I'm actually, since I just got a message from my accountant this morning, so I was working on all the different stuff for our taxes because they have to be ready for the businesses to file. Anyway, so essentially I was looking at the numbers and I'm like, wow, okay, I spend so much time on this Airbnb life and it makes way less money in this area than our standard rentals. So our longer term rentals. Now, the issue that I started realizing with single family rentals is if you have a problem, like, for example, we have to replace the AC unit just went out in one of our rentals. That's going to be a minimum $6,000, whatever. That's something that's not hitting multi-unit. You just have one property that essentially just took 3 months of rent from that property, because we try to do nothing less than $2,000 a month on our single families. So, but there goes 3,000, 3 months worth.
You try to do nothing less than 2,000 a month in gross income.
Yes, in gross income per property.
As rent. Got it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So like the 10% multiplier. So essentially, I was like,
sorry, just for everybody else, can you explain that?
Yeah. So on a $200,000 property, you want to make sure that you're grossing 10% of that amount per year. So in our matrix of flow, we're looking for properties around that price that we know we can get a rent each month of $2,000-ish a month. That has seemed to be a good number for us. We know we can make that work, like just in our different expenses and different things that we have. So essentially,
and that's assuming 20% down traditional mortgage.
Actually, we paid cash for all of our properties, but if I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't. So now but I mean, either way, and there's a lot of reasons why that happened. And now you can refinance even if you do pay all cash or whatever. I needed to get cash out of our businesses and whatever. So there was a reason for it. But essentially now, I mean, that's why we're starting a fund. So I don't have to go and raise money from a bank. And with a fund, you get lower interest rates, you get better terms and conditions and stuff like that if you're going to get loans.
Sorry. Can I pause this before we get into the fund land? Because I want to talk about that. Yes. But I want to talk about kind of the specifics. So you did some single family homes, long-term rental. Yes. But are you also doing some short-term rental?
Yes. We still have some Airbnbs or whatever, VRBOs you want to call it, short-term rentals. They are harder to manage. You have you have to furnish them. You have to make sure that the grounds and everything are really nice. Yeah, we have pools. So you're like have pool maintenance. You've got, it's extremely windy here, which is so annoying because you've got to have somebody go out and blow like 3 or 4 times a week, it seems like, to like keep the grounds clear so that when the people come, because it's this whole game of like reviews, right? So you want to have good reviews. When they come to the property, you want to make sure that everything's beautiful. I spend a fortune on pest control because I'm like terrified of bugs. And this is Louisiana. And there are a lot of bugs. This is the freaking swamp. So there's all this stuff that I didn't know about that I had to like get thrown in the deep end. And so I'm like paranoid that anybody would ever come into our house and there would be a bug on the floor. I know it would be dead, but whatever. It's just my own personal OCD. So you've got all this different maintenance and different things. And then we have a huge property that's like 5 acres now. And we had an extra house on that property. And I was like, okay, well, let's try Airbnb that. I would never again do another Airbnb on my property. No, I would never do that.
Oh yeah. I think it depends on how your property's set up too. Like
we have plenty of space, but they can still use the pool. They can still use one of the fire pits. Like, there's different.
You're sharing space with somebody else then.
And now I'm creating farms, and that's another thing we'll talk about funds. But
so time and a place in life for sure, right?
There's animals, there's chickens and goats. Like, anyways, most people probably don't want to deal with that when they're going on vacation.
So here's the question for you. Single family and Airbnb, single family long-term rental and short-term rental. Those are the two kind of real estate things that you're actively involved in.
That's where we started. Now we're doing more multifamilies and getting more into the storage units. But
Awesome.
really my passion is farming and creating sustainable food supply. So that's my next. So Adrian's dad has different properties or whatever. They've been in real estate a long time. I was never in real estate until like a few years ago because I wanted all my assets to be liquid. I just had been in the marketing world for so many years. I lived in San Diego. It's ridiculously expensive to buy anything there. You're not able to. I looked at condos for like $1.2 million. I'm like, dude, I just can't wrap my brain around this.
With no space.
Nothing. Yeah. And they're terrible. And I was never really a fan of multi-units because of the different issues that you have with noise and whatever, that kind of thing. Just lower quality.
So here's where I'm driving with it is what category at this point, now that you've got some exposure to storage units, multifamily, long-term single family, short-term single family, what asset class are you interested in and why from an investment perspective? So you're interested also in land because you want to grow things,
yes,
which I love. And that, by the way, is a different, for me, that's like, that fits a category of my life of there are investments where my utility of the investment is important. So like I have ownership in a club in Austin, but I refer to it as a club investment, not because I literally own a club, but because it's like I'm a part of a club by owning it. I get access to it and I'm connected to the investors. Yeah. But that's really the reason. It's not about the return. But inside the real estate portfolio, let's omit that for a second and say, yes, you want to buy land so that you can grow goodies. But from an operational perspective and return, what asset class do you like and why?
I personally like farming. So this is something that I didn't know when I first got into this, is that farmers will rent your land from you, just like they would a property for multi-unit or whatever, single family. So you can actually create and you can negotiate. There's so many creative, fun things that people don't realize. For starters, with farming land, you can get a lot of government grants. You can get a lot of different tax breaks, things that are not available on any of these other properties unless you're creating faceted structures in which you're borrowing your own money through IULs and things like that to get those, or you're creating your own funds and you figure out, that's what I'm working on now, is trying to figure out the tax breaks through funds. So essentially, the reason why I love farms is because you're creating something for the community, which is, I have a personal passion for. You have an ownership of your own food supply, which with all the crap that's happening in the world right now is very important. And second of all, you have income that people don't realize is there through different government programs, different government grants, and farmers actually renting your land from you to use it. So you can get all kinds of money for clearing the land, for creating utilities, for different equipment, for all different kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I have a very good friend in Austin that just before the pandemic, man, this guy, I don't know, he's got a crystal ball, or I think he gets pulled towards things and they seem to work out. But he bought 200 acres east of Austin and for nothing. For like 2.1 million for 200 acres. But here's what's crazy is the hay on the land alone. If you harvest the hay, it's like $150,000 a year that he can sell the hay for. He pays somebody $50,000 a year to manage the whole process. He uses the $100,000 a year to pay for the mortgage on the land. And here's the hook. Because of the hay and some cattle, he gets an agriculture exemption, which brings his tax to like nothing.
Yep.
Right. And the ag exemption is this huge part of farming.
Yep.
And you mentioned, leasing the land to a farmer, which is another stellar play. Or you can run the business yourself, right?
Totally. But it just depends on how involved you want to be with anything that you're doing.
Totally. So with the other real estate, are you involved? Do you have somebody that manages it for you? The short-term rentals, obviously, I know are a process because there's people coming in and out of those things all the time.
I'm not really a fan of those. I feel that I would never do short-term again unless I were buying like in Florida or somewhere that is an actual destination.
So that's the thing for you is that you just don't have enough traffic through it where it feels like
not where we live
it's
now.
Full.
No. And I personally, so after having done this for a long time now, I would say I personally want to live near my rentals so that just because I guess I'm a little OCD about stuff, I want to know what's happening on my property. Like I want to make sure, we have cameras on every inch of our property. So I know what is happening at all times. And I just feel like if something goes wrong or there's an emergency, the hardest part for us has been finding and hiring good people to do different farming and management and stuff like that. So if you find that, or you have like family members or somebody who can run it, I highly recommend it. If you don't, it's a nightmare. So I would say if I had to do
I think you've defined every business ever, right? If you don't find good people, it just sucks.
Oh my God, it's so true. But specifically, I don't know. And if that's just because of my own personal desires with our real estate, I know a lot of people that have huge holdings all over the country and they just like are fine with it. I'm personally have a harder time. So I think it just depends on your threshold and tolerance. And I wouldn't have known that until we started having a bunch of Airbnbs. I thought, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to jump on the train and blah, blah, blah. No, I hate it. I don't want to do that.
That makes sense. Okay, so tell me about the structure of the fund, and then I want to get back to kind of some tactics around marketing, because you spend a lot of time in it, and I think people can learn from that. But so, how did you organize the fund? And I want to give some foundation of why we're talking about it, because it seemed like you framed it as a natural progression for you. Yeah. Right. It was, hey, eventually this is the vehicle and the lever to be able to create generational wealth.
Right.
And as I've gone through my own journey in business, more and more I'm exposed to people that have decided that was the case for them also. And so I see more and more use cases for this, and more types of people get involved. How are you structuring it, and what's the kind of the general makeup for Lindsay Shearer and company?
Yes. So essentially, I wanted to when I very first started, I thought I was going to have a fund of funds, they call it, where you have essentially different types of funds that are doing specific things. But now that I'm learning more about the agricultural side, I realized, okay, there's a way that you can make exemptions inside one fund for multiple things that you want to do. So it really just depends on what you want to do. So, and for those of you guys that don't know exactly the idea and concept of a fund, it's essentially bringing other people's money together inside an investment vehicle. And you have the typical structure, what are called limited partners, which are essentially the investors, people who are bringing their money to the table. And then you typically have a general partner or a board of general partners, which in this case would be me, who is somebody, and there's 3 different roles that they can fill, which is admin roles, finding the deals, and actually finding funds for the deals. So finding investors. So the general partner can have different roles. And for me personally, I already know where a lot of the deals are. I've built a lot of relationships down here. My husband has been working in this area in real estate for many, many years. So we already have a lot of that general partnership role done together. And then for funding requirements, for reporting requirements, you have to have some type of a third-party entity in order for the SEC and your funding boards to have transparency in reporting. So most people do that through hiring some kind of an accounting firm or whatever. And so that's what we're doing. I would say, and then I have a structure for that third position, which is people who are coming in to help us raise money. I know a lot of people, so I'm doing a lot of the raising myself. And then I also have it open to people who can do it on a commission-based basis. So anybody that wants to bring money into our fund, they can get a percentage commission based on whatever. And they also have the ability to become one of the limited partners, it's called, where if they want to invest their own money into the fund and get a return, they can do that as well. So... yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And what's your general structure? So for the fund that you're creating, what's your structure for the financial arrangement? And obviously so just in general, how do you structure that?
So I'm still working out. I don't have all of our guidelines fully done. We're not fully ready to receive money yet. So I'm still deciding, because I have this passion for hard assets as well. So I'm trying to merge as many things as I can into one fund without having to do a fund of funds, because it's super expensive to set it up. It's like between $70,000 and $100,000 per country that you want to receive money from. So in our case, we're starting with USA only USA only partners or limited partners, aka people that want to invest. And we've got essentially 80% of the portfolio is going to be real estate. So mostly farmland and multifamily units. So then the 20%, originally I was going to do some marketing, but I realized that I don't want to wrap my marketing up with our general real estate stuff. So instead, we're going to do a minimum of 20% in commodities. So essentially, in this case, silver, because I have a really good relationship with a silver setup. So we'll have 20% of that. And then I have some creative things that we're doing that I can't talk about yet because they're still not fully developed, but to give some interesting benefits to our investors.
And and like you said, this isn't fully structured, but in general, on a given fund that you're creating, what are the general partners, i.e. you and your company? What's your return, or what are you keeping, and what are you offering to the limited partners? And how do you structure that, or how do you think about that?
The general partner gets essentially a salary to do their job, depending on if they're finding goals, if they are doing a percentage of the accounting. And if they would be treated just like a regular investment raiser. So they get a percentage of whatever money they bring in. The general partner is structured that way. Now, the general partner is still allowed to become a limited partner as well, where they can put their own money in and get whatever decided upon return, which we're shooting for between 5 and 8%, but it's going to be like per year as a dividend. And the limited partners, it's my goal to set up a structure that eventually me as the general partner will actually own all of the properties in the investment portfolio. And based on the rents and the different things that we're doing, we'll get the return to the investors. Right now, when you're starting out and you're raising a lot of money, multi-millions of dollars, and you don't have that money, that's kind of the point of a fund, you're giving up a percentage ownership within a certain period of time. And then I have it structured so that over time, we essentially buy all those properties with our own returns.
So your ambition overall, that is largely a real estate fund, and at the end of it, to try to take out the investments from the group, pay them your return, and keep the properties.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I appreciate going through that.
Yeah.
Look, I know we're coming up on time, but I want to talk about, if you're a game for it, kind of tactics around some of the specific social channels. And Pinterest is just a bizarre one because very few people are doing it. And I know that people do it. I just don't know the specifics. So I would love if you can talk about kind of why, like everything that you can, but first off, why does Pinterest rank? Like, why does that rank in Google the way that it does? Why does it get favor? And then what's the game? What's the structure to get that traffic and drive it back?
So Pinterest is a search engine. Most people think it's a social media site, and it's kind of been branded like a social media site, but really it doesn't function like a social media site at all. And most of the reason why people don't have that much success or don't take it seriously is because they're applying social media strategies to it, and it's never going to work. So we applied search strategies to Pinterest. Now, the quality of users on Pinterest is excellent. There are over 51% of the people that are on there every single week. 93% of people on the platform have made a purchase from the platform. There is extremely high purchase intent, and people are really looking for solutions to their problems. So if you think about it like a mini version of Google, where it's actually an image search engine, a visual search engine, where you can see, it's the only place where you can see an image, really save it, come back later and purchase. So it's got a really unique set of skills, Liam Nielsen wise, that you have to really learn to master with search intent. And so that's really the game, and that's why we became so good at it so fast, because I understand search intent, and I was using it to master for search intent, and I knew that Google favors it. And I was just reading on some Reddit blogs this last couple of weeks. Everyone's like all pissed off, like, oh, damn it, Pinterest is ranking really high again. And I'm like, yes, in the background, because Google knows the quality of the users on Pinterest. They know the quality of the content that's getting visibility on there. And so it showcases as another search engine. So it's considered high authority because the Pinterest search engine is ranking things in high authority. And then Google's picking that up as, oh, okay, this search engine that we respect is ranking this content as high authority.
Love it. That's awesome. I think that lens is super helpful in general. One of the things that becomes challenging is what content and why. So are there certain types of businesses that you would use on Pinterest and certain that you wouldn't? Mm-hmm. Like it makes sense if you are, to me in my head, it makes sense if you are, an arts and crafts company or a furniture company or something, right? Yeah. But what are the industries that somebody be like, really? You're using Pinterest to grow that you have done with companies? It's
blown my mind. I mean, so many people were sleeping on it for so long. I always say Pinterest isn't just for wedding planning anymore. I mean, now the highest performing industries, I would say, consistently are mom and baby brands, anything to do with beauty, skincare, hair care, that kind of thing. Fashion does really well. Home decor does excellent. So anything that lighting, rugs, furniture, decorating, interior design, obviously weddings. E-commerce is crushing it on there. I haven't really had a client that I feel like is not successful.
What about something like, what about the strange ones? So those to me make sense because if I'm looking for home decor is like the example that's obvious to me where I'm exploring specifically how things look, right? Like I want to see how things look and I want ideas about the home decor. What about, but other e-com, and that's why I wanted to jump in because other e-com is the question, right? So what about a supplement company?
Yeah, we've done really well with different supplement companies. Usually the ones that are branded a little bit more flashy do better.
And so what's the approach?
Yeah.
Like what do you create to get attention and how do you make sure it gets attention and gets clicks?
Yeah. So there's a few different things. One, in order to rank higher in search, you have to match up your keyword strategy on the image, on the description, on the boards, inside your different headlines, inside the interest category. So there's a lot that has to do with keyword matching. And then there's the result that people are trying to get from the product. So for example, we do a lot of hormone related products for women. So reduce hot flashes, things like that you're looking for outcome based responses. So think about it like search. If you're going to a search engine, you're like, okay, how do I reduce hot flashes? Or maybe you're going to YouTube to look at a video for something like that. And that's the same approach that we take on Pinterest is giving them a solution to their problem. So keeping in mind what people are searching for their problems. And then giving them a solution and positioning the product as the solution to the problem. So a lot of times we don't just focus on the names or whatever, but we create content that's like 10 ways to stop hot flashes or 10, something that's more education based, even if it's an e-commerce product versus just straight showcasing the product, which is what you can get away with for mostly Facebook or whatever. But in order for it to work on search, you've got to be more creative with the results.
Got it. So you are creating content and hosting it on Pinterest, and that's getting search visibility, pins, etc.
Yep.
And then you're linking out to a site, a landing page,
website, product page, blog post, whatever it is.
Got it. And how do you think about that content creation? So you mentioned 10 ways to, or top 3 things, or is it the same kind of hooks that you would use on a landing page or on a meme, like in a social post where it's like one surprising thing are they the same types of hooks or do you have kind of unique Pinterest things?
Yes. And there's similar types of content on Pinterest to like, for example, a reel or a TikTok video. They have what are called idea pins, which is essentially the same thing where you're trying to be a little sexier, trying to get more of a hook to get somebody to click on that. And then you just have general blog information. A lot of people drive a lot of content to their blog for organic or the product page, but But we teach our e-commerce brands, if you're going to do a lot of stuff on Pinterest, you've got to make your product pages more educational. They need to talk about the ingredients. They need to talk about how it's manufactured, how it's sourced. And essentially your pages become more like landing pages. And that really, the truth of the matter is that's going to help on every channel. The more developed your customer journey essentially is, it's going to help on every channel. So, but I would say your average person that's on Pinterest in general is looking for something to read. So a lot of times we will position a how-to, a question, Q&A, some type of a review on a product, and actually drive them back to a blog post that's essentially turned into, that has like an add to cart widget at the bottom. It's like, oh, okay, if you want to try any of these products, here you go.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Top 3 YouTube tips for people that are driving traffic on YouTube.
Yeah. Number 1, do your keyword research. This is true for every search engine. Most people are just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to create some cool content that I think is trendy. Well, if you actually do the research and figure out what exact specific keyword is trending, then use that exact specific, the same spelling, the same exact word order in your headline, in your description, in all the ways that you're describing your content. And when you're creating the content, you are going to rank 1,000 times faster than just creating an arbitrary strategy. Number 2, definitely got to get on the YouTube Shorts. So if you're creating content already for Reels, TikToks, etc., definitely be posting them on YouTube and using, again, that keyword in your actual, because YouTube has a feature where it auto transcribes everything that's said from the videos and hooks that into their algorithm for keywords. So you need to be saying that keyword in everything that you're creating. And then number 3, sharing everywhere. Sharing your content, you can repurpose it. I'm a huge fan of, like, if you're going to create one piece of content, you've got to share and repurpose it everywhere that you possibly can and drive traffic back to that, because YouTube, again, is a search engine. So it's similar to this idea of Google with link building, where the more people that are talking about sharing your content, the higher you're going to rank in search.
Awesome. Most underrated platform to drive traffic from?
It's a good one. It depends on the type of brand. I would say for e-commerce, it is Google for sure, Google search engine. For local business, it's also the Google Maps and the Google search for maps and location specific. For most local businesses, it's also TikTok. Nobody's hardly using TikTok for local business yet, and definitely not YouTube Shorts for that. Info products for sure, TikTok and YouTube Shorts. You're still getting away with a good bit of stuff from Reels on Instagram too.
Dig it. What is something that you wish you knew when you started that you know now?
Oh man. Oh my God. My husband and I fight about this all the time because he's not a marketing guy. And I'm like, dang it, just listen to me. I would hire way faster. I would hyper niche, micro niche way faster. I would start my real estate journey way earlier. I would start my fund journey way earlier. This is one thing I did do really well in my career, but I still feel like I could have gone harder. I went really hard for mentorship and learning and worked so hard on my mental thinking processes. Most people are not addressing the healing journey that you need to go on just in life. There's so much stuff that affects our underlying thinking process, and you self-sabotage. That has been the hardest part of my journey as an entrepreneur, for sure, by far. And I went really hard on that, but I probably could have gone harder, but I just didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so I would definitely go harder on a healing journey as a younger person on how I'm making decisions. I'm thinking about how am I making decisions. And I felt like most of my 20s, even though most people would probably look, oh, you had a best-selling book, I had great agencies, I had different things, but I didn't have a focus. That's part of the journey, like trying and testing different things. But I would say if I would have had a really good mentor that understood finances and understood these different things with the fund, I would have taken a totally different direction and made a lot more money a lot faster.
That's awesome. One more.
Okay.
What are you doubling down on this year? At this point, you're established. You've got a couple 8-figure companies. You've got a fund that you're starting.
Right.
What growth mechanism are you doubling down on right now?
That's a good question. I feel like I've been slightly scattered, so I don't know if I have the perfect answer for you, because really I am doubling down on international farming, and setting up international, essentially dual citizenship situations. And that's honestly what has taken me so long with this fund setup, has been just different things that are happening in the US. I'm also doubling down on real hard assets, because I know the CBDC, the digital currency, is coming, and oh my God, don't even get me started on that. But essentially I'm like, I got to hustle my ass off and buy more property and buy more real estate within the next 2 years, and create bigger vehicles for wealth in the next 2 years for sure.
Got it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you carving out some time. It's great to dig into some of the nuances. I'm excited to play with Pinterest.
Yeah. Sure.
Where can people find out more about you or the agencies, or anywhere you want to point them?
Yeah, you can always find me on all social at Lindsay B. Shearer, lindsayshearer.com, pinsforprofit.com, and brandranks.com.
I love it. Awesome. Lindsay, I appreciate you carving out time.
Yeah, so excited to hang out with y'all. Keep on rocking, keep scaling.
Love it. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed doing it. I need your help. There are 3 places you can find Beyond a Million: the podcast itself, beyondamillion.com, which has some cool free resources, including a free course. And we finally launched the Beyond a Million YouTube channel. I would love it if you would go there and subscribe. And if you don't want to, you still would probably enjoy seeing the visual content. Check it out, youtube.com/@Beyond a Million.